everyone! Welcome back to my YouTube channel. I am 𝙨𝙮𝙖, and after some trial and errors, I figured out the best formula for filming my videos is at the corner of my bed, because you got the natural lighting from my window and the made-up lighting from above. So you get this perfect composition shot. And I found that I feel very comfortable here. I can sit on my bed and talk to the camera. I feel like I have figured out the camera setup a little bit as well, so hopefully I can survive this filming without any cramps, or I can just get a hold of things, you know. Anyways, as I promised, it's the end of December. It's 29th of December by the time that I filmed this, and I have finished three books in the whole month of December. To be fair, it's the most that I have read for this whole year because I have school, so I don't have that much free time, and the free time that I have is taken up to sleep because I need my sleep and I wanted to sleep. I know that it's supposed to be like a 2024 books wrapped. All of the books and all of the review of the books that I have read this year. But for this video specifically, it's just the December read, because to be fair, I cannot remember what I read this whole year, really. From January up until November, I'm pretty sure I don't read anything. I didn't read anything during August until November, and I'm not really sure about what I read from January to summer. So yeah, you gotta work with what you have to. And this is the review that you've been waiting for. Let's get started. The first book that I finished this month was The Final Gambit by Jennifer Lynn Barnes, the third book from the Inheritance Games trilogy. And this book is about the continuation from the second book, The Hawthorne Legacy, and it's basically wrapping up the loose ends from the second book. So this book kind of wraps up by the end of Avery's rule of living in the Hawthorne house for a year. So basically, back in the first book, characters have already said that in order to take all of the inheritance for Avery, she has to live in the Hawthorne house for a year. And in order for her to be like officially owning all of the money that the billionaire gave her, she has to be 18. And this book is the moment where she finally turns 18, and when she finally wraps up the whole year of living in the Hawthorne house without international travels. Like, that's the whole point, is that she cannot really leave the city where she lives in until like a year passed after she was told that, oh, you are given this much inheritance by this old billionaire. We follow Avery as she plays a final game from the old man, which is Tobias Hawthorne, and kind of unraveling a bunch of loose knots from the Hawthorne family's weird family tree. And I swear to you, like, during when I read this, I needed some family tree diagram for some reason, because I'm confused, because some people, like some of these characters, are not direct descendants of Tobias Hawthorne. They were just adopted, and then of course, since they are adopted, they kind of create this whole new like family tree, and you have to figure out their motives and like the reason behind them and like all of those stuff. And one of my biggest regret is that not rereading, or like at least looking back, looking back on the second book, because I jumped straight into the third book and I didn't really read the second book, and I was really confused and kind of getting lost at moments where it directly ties to the second book. So I was like reading this and like, oh god, I really have to read the second book, but I'm too lazy for it. So I'm trying to make sense of it as best as my memory could revoke from that second book plot. But there are some times where I need specific moments in order for me to connect the dots between the second and the third book, and then connecting the dots of like where the hints that the characters are dropping. So yeah, I am not big of a fan of myself doing that, jumping straight into the third book without reading the second book, knowing heavily that these three books tied together as like a one quick plot line. And this book, for me, actually, this book's great, and it really ties me to the book, and like not, it doesn't really give me a chance to be like, okay, stop. That's the perfect time to stop. No, the book continues on, and it feels like you cannot really put it down because things will be happening, and then things are hanging the second that you put it down. So you're like constantly getting asked yourself, oh my gosh, what happens next? What happens next? I need to read it again. I need to read it again. It just kind of gives you like, it gives you the kind of like the vibe of curiosity that you just keep, you just want to keep going, you want to keep reading, you don't want to stop. A bad side of this book is that Avery and Jameson especially, they all are very smart and seems to always have succeed on the puzzles given to them, which is fine, which is great, which is one of their traits. And I feel like a lot of people would actually do that, like they are mastering games and stuff, and then they would just, in the blink of an eye, they would figure out the answer. But I wanted to see them to fail for a little bit, to not master any games that was thrown at them. So I wanted them to be like stuck in a game that was given by the old man or by other people. I wanted to see them fail for a moment, cannot even move on from like this one game and struggle with it for a while before moving on. And because they were seems to be like this perfect smart riddle smart couple who's like, Avery is like super smart in math, and Jameson is like super wild, super bold, and they have this heavy chemistry. I wanted them to be like a little bit imperfect, just like any other human. Even the most genius people have their own failures, right? And they both didn't. They both don't have that. And I feel like I wanted to see them fail for a while because they have been too perfect so far. The ending of this book kind of also gives away that. It's kind of predictable that the ending would be like on Avery's side. But one thing that I like about the ending is that it gives it to the Avery. Like the win was given to Avery, but it also at the same time it kind of takes away something from Avery too. So I feel like I could forgive the ending. One of my favorite part is that this book nailed Grayson. And like they nailed Grayson because Grayson, we see him as on the first book, I think first and second book, we see Grayson as this very strict, uptight, perfect person. And in this book, we unravel a lot of his struggles and like his depression. I just think that it was, I don't know, written beautifully. It's just, there were scenes where Grayson is like, obvious that he's struggling, and obvious that his character, it's like, I'm struggling, but I admit that I'm struggling, but I don't want anyone's help, you know? And I feel like, aside from the fact that Jennifer writes perfect Jameson and Avery's character, like a perfect couple, I love how she portrays Grayson's struggles here. He's like the perfect kid, he's like the heir apparent, but he still has these struggles of being expected. We see all of the walls that Grayson given himself kind of chips away one by one. It's absolutely beautiful to see, and it's absolutely, for me, it felt like character is like a lot more human than what was expected from book's characters, and it what makes Grayson unique on its own, even though although technically I would say that he doesn't move on from the past. They use that device of what happened in the past doesn't stay in the past. It was brought by Grayson to the future. But I like how imperfect Grayson is, and we can see clearly that Grayson is chipping away, while Jameson doesn't really show it as much. The second book that I read and finished this month is the bridging novels between the Inheritance Games and the Grandest Game, which is the brothers Hawthorne. In the first three books of this trilogy, the Inheritance Games trilogy, we follow Avery Graham's POVs, while on this book we followed two of the four Hawthorne brothers' POVs, which is Grayson Hawthorne and Jameson Hawthorne. So a little bit of context and spoiler alert as well. So in the first book or the second, I think the second book, we have already known that Grayson has a father named Sheffield Grayson, which, how can I say it nicely, which the Hawthorne family kills because he already put Avery's life in danger. So yeah, take that as you will. Anyways, in this novel, we see Grayson meets his father's family, which, for context, Grayson is actually a product of an affair between 𝙨𝙭 Hawthorne and Sheffield Grayson. So Sheffield Grayson is actually already married when he's doing that with 𝙨𝙭, and Sheffield already has a wife. Her name is 𝙨𝙀 Grayson, and after the making of Grayson a few years later, 𝙨𝙀, which is the official wife of Sheffield Grayson, have twin daughters, which is Juliet Grayson, or Gigi, and Savannah Grayson. And in this book, Grayson meets the whole family, the Grayson family, and unravels all of their secrets while helping them. I think I can say that, while helping them to survive their struggle. Juliet and Savannah doesn't really know that their father is already dead and get killed by their own stepbrother. So they were like trying to figure out the mysteries and, you know, all that, like, oh, the reason why dad left and stuff. So Grayson, like, he knows all of this, but he tries to help while also helping the financial struggles that the Graysons have since the father died, and since he has a lot of fraud and like FBIs are involved. So yeah, a lot of those stuff, and Grayson's helping them. And then the second one is we follow Jameson Hawthorne's, where he meets his father for the very first time, Ian Jameson. And we kind of found out that Ian Jameson is part of this whole like kind of royal family. And then Ian, being the father, being a good father that he is, was asking Jameson if he could play a game in legendary gambling bar in London. And Ian was asking Jameson, despite the fact that he just met his son for the very first time, asked Jameson if he wants to, you know, play and win this house, this big mansion that his father's family owned, which was given to Jameson's father, and win it back because he lost it while gambling, and give it back to his father, and then his father would give it to Jameson. So it's like Jameson winning that house for his father, and then his father's gonna give that house to Jameson. So it's basically Jameson just winning for himself. And then in this book, what I like about this book is what this book actually lacks. We could see that Jameson actually having struggles and, like, you know, trauma dumping, like the result of not being with his father, and also the same time as 𝙨𝙭 doesn't really take care of her sons, and just straight up giving them to the grandfather, to Tobias Hawthorne, to just play around with them and construct them to be like a genius machine for games and riddles and stuff. So we can see that the Grayson struggle continues in here. Like, well, we already see him struggles in this book, but it comes from Avery's perspective. Now we see the inside of what's going on in Grayson's head while he's doing all of that. So this is like basically a very private insight of what's going on, and traumas that the Hawthornes are actually gone through because the emotional neglect from their fathers and mother, and the only attention that they have given was their grandfather's attention, which basically just to construct them to be like riddle solving machines. So we can see like a little bit, we can see an insight of their childhood in here. We can see an insight of those childhood gives them power and also at the same time weakness. We can see that Grayson is always set to be like the heir apparent. He's always set to be perfect. He's always set to be making no mistakes, and he was always expected to be those. And we can also see Jameson struggles with nothing being expected to him, while he felt envy towards his brothers who already has things to be expected from them, because you know Nash Hawthorne is expected to be wild and always like traveling around the world. Grayson is the heir apparent, and Xander is the most genius out of the family. And Jameson was not expected by anything, and then now he's expected by his father to win something so big, and is actually his. It's gonna end up to be his. So I feel like this book tackles a lot more of emotional stuff rather than the games, rather than focus on the game, because they still solve riddles and stuff. But what I liked about this book is that they highlighted how those riddles and how those games kind of um, affects them and reminds them of their childhood a lot. The third book that I read and finished this month is Once Upon a Broken Heart by Stephanie Garber. This is the first book of the Once Upon a Broken Heart trilogy, and it exists in the same world of Caraval trilogy by the same author. So I bought the not in English copy of this book. This is the translated copy, but look at those edges. I love how beautiful that is, and like it matches the whole cover. And I already bought all three of them, so the other two are as gorgeous as this is because they all have sprayed edges. So this book follows the story of Evangeline Fox, who's heartbroken because the love of her life, Luke Navarro, was getting married to Marisol Tourmaline, who is her stepsister. In sorrow and desperation, she went to a magical church and prays to one of the fates, which is the Prince of Hearts, or you might know him as Jax. So he made a deal with Jax, saying that if Jax could stop the wedding from happening, she would give him in exchange of 3 kisses to 3 different people that Jax will choose. Jax agreed to that term, and then Evangeline was sent to the place where Marisol and Luke was getting married, just to find them turned into stone, technically stopping the marriage from happening. But because she regrets her choice, and was like, because the whole party was turning into stone, like even the bride and the groom. So in regret, she drinks a poisonous drink from the cup, like that was held by the stones. And in exchange of them not getting stoned, like the whole wedding party not getting stoned, Evangeline becomes a statue herself. She was saved by a healer, and everyone else celebrated her as a savior because no one else knew her deal with Jax. And as a result of being called the savior for the wedding party that her stepsister held, she was invited to the castle by Scarlett and Donatella Dragna, which you may recognize from the first 3 books of this universe, which is the Caraval series. So Scarlett and Donatella also told her in the castle that she would be their country's representation in the Nocta Never Ending in the Magnificent North. So what is Nocta Never Ending? Nocta Never Ending is a ball that was held to find the perfect wife for their crown prince, Apollo Acadian. So there we go. That's the start of basically a Cinderella story for Evangeline, where, I think this is spoilers, but where she would be chosen by Apollo to be his wife, and basically becomes a princess in the Magnificent North. Here's one thing about translated books. I cannot comment on the tone of the writing or anything that's regarding the physical form of the writing, because this is the best that the translator could get to getting the point and the tone across from English to Indonesia. And there might be some faulties because there is no equivalent between the 2 languages. So I can't really comment on the storytelling of this book or stuff. I pretty much appreciate Stephanie and the translator to write this book, so I cannot gonna comment on how the tone of this book kind of feels odd and feels uniformed, because this is basically every translated books in Indonesian is pretty much sound the same like this book. I mean, if you have ever read translated books and you read both the English and the Indonesian, Because this book sounds uniformed like any other Indonesian English to Indonesian books that I've owned. So there's no distinct voice between the authors that comes across to the translated books. So basically, this book is a mix of a fantasy and also a bit of an older YA books. Why can I say this? So basically, I think for around 2 years now, I have been attracted mostly to books that are not exactly Harry Potter-ish fantasy. So I think it's because of my age. I'm 17 now, and lately my likes of books turn into from Harry Potter and Percy Jackson-ish turns into Taylor Jenkins Reid's books, which kind of tackles a lot more real life theme, like about love, about fame, relationships with people and others, stuff like that. A more real life stuff. That's what I'm attracted to currently. So this book is having that fantasy theme, but you can clearly see the difference between this book and the Harry Potter and Percy Jackson books, because Harry Potter and Percy Jackson books, especially the first issue books, like the first books in the series, usually tackles more and focus more on the magic side and the value of friendships and dragons and magics and spells and stuff like that. While this book tackles, it also has magic and poisons in it and, like, I don't know, truth serum and stuff, but this also tackles about like what a situation that you could actually happen in real life, you know, like the bad decisions that you will make when you got your heart broken, the life lessons of that, the takeaway lessons of that. So I feel like this book is perfect for you if you used to be a fantasy reader and you started getting into like a lot more mature themes like love and more real life themes. I feel like this one's perfect. It gets its points across rather quickly. It's basically saying that if you're heartbroken, making a decision is basically bringing hell to you. And yeah, it applies to this book as well as your real life. So that's the life lesson takeaway from this book. Take that as you will. And that wraps up the 3 books that I managed to read this month. That was my record for this year. So my New Year's resolution is to get and read more books next year. Hopefully I can achieve it. I have a lot of in like my TBR pile, so hopefully I can get those achievements ready to beat. I don't want to see my Goodreads year in books because first of all, I don't read that much and I can't remember if I input any read books this year, so it's gonna be so bad. It's gonna look so weird on my profile, so please don't look at it, and nor did I want to see it. And so yeah, hopefully that yapping, however many minutes I have been yapping to you, become really helpful, or you just enjoy me here talking. I don't really know. Hopefully it's helpful for you either way. And I'll see you guys the next time that I feel ready to yap into the camera again. And if you wanted to be notified, for the very first people to be notified by the time that time comes, hopefully you can get there by just clicking the turn on notification button after you subscribe to my channel, and leave a comment of your book, the favorite book that you've read this year. Bye bye.